We're going to try again here. If you find us, great. If not, there'll be a video later. You know,
yes, we work on technology.
We do, and technology has failed us immensely. Thank you very much, Google, for changing everything the way you do it forever. Before we get started, hopefully you'll see this, but one of the things I'm really excited about is we have started podcasting Ask the Security Guy. Yeah. So if you are into podcasting and listen to podcasts when you're in the car or at the gym, wherever, you can find us on all of the major podcasting sites, iTunes, Google, Spotify. Just search Ask the Security Guy and you will find us there.
Absolutely.
So for today's topic, we are looking at something called two-factor or multi-factor authentication.
Yep.
So Shawn, tell us what that even means.
Okay, so let's think about passwords. Mm-hmm. So passwords in computing came in about the 1960s.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Been a while. Now, what's interesting about that is passwords came in the early 1960s, and in 1962, we had the first recorded incident of password theft.
That was before I was born. That's kind of exciting.
Before I was born, too. So it's interesting that we see passwords and password theft right on the heels of each other, right from the very beginning. And if you look throughout history, the use of authentication, a challenge and a response, has always been there. Mm-hmm. The enemy at the gates, authentication to, what's your password, what's the open sesame, was like a childhood example of that.
Yeah.
So this idea of something you have, something you know, or even something you are, has been around for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And the use of it in technology is just really an expansion of an old practice. So when it comes to computing technology, we have this idea of a one-factor authentication. Your username and your password.
Yep.
Something you know. Okay?
Well, sometimes.
Well, ideally. Hopefully.
Password managers. I don't know. But we'll get to that. That's another topic.
Well, it sure beats the sticky notes that I find on people's monitors or under the keyboards or under the mouse pads or the variety of other places that I have found passwords written down. And it's especially convenient when the username and password combination are there. For me as a hacker, it's quite enjoyable because it makes my life so much simpler. So flash forward to where we are today. Also, let's see, in 1986, the first two-factor authentication was introduced onto the market.
Nice.
And that was through RSA Secure ID. Although so what that is, it's a little key fob type thing.
Okay.
And it displays a code based on time, and an algorithm and a sequence that drives that number. And what you would do is you would log into your workstation, and your workstation would have the software that paired with the software on this little fob you carry. Okay. So you would enter in your username and your password, and then whatever number was showing up on this fob. And that was the original two-factor authentication. Now, it is still in existence.
Yeah.
RSA is still out there. They're still doing their thing. Secure ID still exists. It's gone through some iterations. It's had some bad hacks over the years. But overall, they're still there. And as with any company that gets hacked, they learned. Or they fail. In this case, they learned. So more generically, what is two-factor?
Yeah,
what is multi-factor? Or so, we have 2FA, we have MFA, I'm sure there'll be another acronym before too much longer. There's too many FAs out there. That didn't sound right.
No, but keep going.
Anyway. All right, moving on. Two-factor authentication generically means something you have and something you know, or something you are and something you know. So biometrics, something you are. Mm-hmm. Something you have. Could be a RSA Secure ID, could be your cell phone. Oh. Could be a little key fob or a YubiKey from Google with some little token on it that you plug into your computer that says, okay, now I have my username, my password, my YubiKey, and it's going to look for all three and say you're in.
Right.
Two-factor authentication means simply that. it's two pieces. So it's your one factor, which is usually your username and password, and then a second factor, which can be a one-time code on your phone. It could be Google Authenticator that you have on your phone. It could be a text message you get to your phone. It could be a code that is emailed to your personal email address. There's a variety of ways it can be accomplished, but it's the idea of it's two things: something you have and something you know, or something you know and something you get.
Right. Yeah, banks have gotten really good about that.
Yes. So credit card companies and banks are doing fantastic work with this, and making it really accessible for everyone. So if you don't have a cell phone that can take text messages, no problem. They'll send it to your email address. Don't have either one, they'll call you. And an automated system will actually call you and give you a number that you then punch into whatever screen you're on. And it's good for a certain short period of time, like 10 or 15 minutes. So those are all bits that work. And the reason they work is if a hacker gets a hold of a password database and say they got a hold of APUs and got all of our passwords and figured out how to crack them, but we had multi-factor in authentication in place and enforced, and you were all using it, the fact that someone had that does them no good unless you use your password other places, which you should never do.
Correct.
So assuming that you've only ever used one password for one place and you have multi-factor turned on, then what that means is without that second factor, or a third factor if we decide to do something like that for more secure data, having only one piece of that puzzle does me no good.
Right. And I think that's the biggest piece for people to understand is layers.
Yes.
Layers of security, not just a password.
So in security, we talk about this principle of defense in depth.
Yep.
And it sounds so simple, and it is actually really simple. But the concept is multiple layers of security. Any one by itself is not that great. You know, it's not designed to stop everything. But when you start stacking them on top of each other, all of a sudden it becomes really hard to get through. Because, okay, now I got through this layer. Now I got another layer. Now I got another layer. And you have to keep drilling down through this stack. So, and again, the intent of security protocols in general, you're not trying to be the most secure guy out there. You're trying to be secure enough so that the attacker will go somewhere else.
Yeah, because you don't want to become that challenge of, oh, they must have something really important and I want to get it. Because that's kind of the mentality of hackers. And some of them, not all.
And some,
Others, it's just
about the money.
Yeah.
So for either personality type, if it's the financially driven or the challenge driven, you don't want to present a challenge.
No.
You want to be annoying enough to the financially driven that they'll go somewhere else. Because frankly, you're not worth the time and effort to invest in cracking your stuff. Or the challenge type is, well, I know I can get it, but it's really not that much fun.
Yeah.
So either way, it's a win. They go somewhere else.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I don't want them in my stuff. So we talked about what is two-factor. It kind of is becoming very obvious why it's important.
Yes.
You know, when it comes to your credit cards and your bank accounts, it gets annoying when, you know, I open up a browser and my banking, you know, login says, I don't recognize this computer.
Yep.
Let me send you a text message.
Right.
Annoying, but I want to keep the little bit of money I have, so I deal with it.
Right.
What would you recommend as best practices for us when it comes to two-factor or multi-factor authentication?
Well, I think probably for most of us, the simplest thing to do is to enable a text message with your cell phone. If you don't have a smartphone or you don't want to have text messages coming into that device, you can always have them emailed to a specific email account that is separate from whatever you're using. One of the big things that I recommend is that whatever your personal email account is, make sure you have some form of two-factor or multi-factor turned on for that. Because that's where all your password reset emails go, and that's what really is kind of the keys to the kingdom. So this idea that we've had for years and years and years and years of using a single password to protect all your stuff I mean, we've talked about before a number of times where we said this idea of passwords is dead.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what we got.
Right. And transitioning away from it is going to be painful and time consuming and expensive and costly and blah, 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 blah. It's going to require huge changes to behavior. Well, it's been around since the 60s. Of course, it's going to require some changes.
It's a long time.
Yeah. So it's going to take some time. In the meantime, we have biometrics, which are improving. They're not foolproof, but they are improving. We have face recognition and retinal scanning, both of which are improving. Face recognition now, some of the newer technologies are actually 3D mapping. Some of the original ones you could fool with a picture. Now you can't. The problem is if you change your appearance, so for me, if I were to grow my beard out and be super bushy and take away my glasses, it would be problematic.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of facial. I just not.
So does it work? Yes. Has it gotten a lot better? Absolutely. Because it does combinations of infrared and 3D and regular camera.
Mm-hmm.
So the infrared side can work through some of those issues. But it's still not quite there, unless it's a really expensive implementation, which they exist.
But not
they
for
are
us.
pretty, well, they're cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Apple and Android both have pretty good fingerprint scanners now.
Yeah.
Some of the original problems with some of the early fingerprint scanners was they actually stored an image of your fingerprint, which is problematic because now that's data that you can't change, that if it was compromised, creates a real problem.
Yeah.
The way those fingerprint scanners work now is they store data points about your fingerprint. That by itself means nothing.
Right.
So if somebody gets a hold of these data points about your fingerprint, who cares? Kind of. But it's that combination of things, right? So you have your username and password, that's a pair. That's something you know. Something you have would be your smartphone. Something you are typically falls in the category of some form of biometrics. And one of the newer things in the biometric field is they're talking now about behavioral biometrics, where they analyze things like speech patterns or hand movements. So do you talk with your hands like I do?
Yes, so do I. So yeah, that would be not good either.
But it can also monitor your gait, how you walk. All things that are very, very difficult to duplicate, because those things tend to be far more unique to a person and very difficult to duplicate. Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Well, it's not a proven technology either. It's being explored right now. But I mean, some of the challenges they're facing is people change over time.
Yeah. Oh, depending on my back, I could walk totally different tomorrow.
Exactly.
So,
or your speech patterns could be affected by how you're feeling,
mm-hmm.
or if you have a cold or whatever.
So yeah, I think I'm sticking with the fingerprint.
So it's a very simple concept of something you have, something you know, right? Or something you are and something you know. But it's those combinations of things.
Mm-hmm.
Two-factor is usually just a pairing of two. Multi-factor means you have multiple things.
Yeah.
So banks, what they're going to look at sometimes, you'll see this if you log in from a computer you've never used before to access your bank. It's going to say, I don't recognize this computer.
Yep, it gets real aggravated.
Right.
And I'm glad. It's as annoying as it can be. Yes, I'm glad.
Well, that could be considered a form of multi-factor because on the last computer you logged into, it had set a cookie on your computer that says, okay, you've logged in successfully from this computer before, and we acknowledge that. So that's kind of transparent to you. You typically don't see that, but that's something that's happening in the background that's providing another layer of that security stack, if you will. So it's pretty simple in its use. It's either a text message with a code, and the code is usually a 6 to 9 digit code that you're just going to type in on the login screen.
Yep.
It can send you an email with a code, or it could send you a link to click on, an extra link to click on to a specified email address. They can do a phone call to you. That works too. And then one of the big questions we get is, when are we doing that here at APU?
Yep.
Well, I'm very happy to report that APU and Google have been working very closely together over actually the last couple of years And because we use single sign-on here at APU, it has taken us some time to work with Google to figure out an appropriate scenario that's going to have the right combination of technologies and how they work together to make this work.
Exciting.
But I'm pleased to report that the engineering team and Google have really come up, I think, with a solid roadmap, and we're looking forward to it in the very near future.
Yeah, because we don't have that here, and it at times can be problematic.
Right.
I did want to jump back to ask a question and just kind of point out, a lot of times when you log into your bank account, and it'll have a little checkbox, remember this computer. And most of them are really good to say, don't check this, this is a public computer.
Right.
But is your overall feeling, if this is my home computer, my home office, should I check that box to remember my computer?
If it is your personal home computer that nobody else uses ever, okay. If it is your work computer, absolutely not.
No.
Because even if it is your work computer, people can log in for support reasons. Other people can log in to different profiles on your computer, which doesn't necessarily give them access to your stuff, but it does present a more increased risk. But as far as using your work computer to access those personal things, you can. I would not recommend using the remember this computer or the remember this.
Yeah.
Treat it like a public computer.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know, because I think, okay, I'll own it. Sometimes I do need to check my bank account at work.
It's not uncommon.
Yeah. So multi-factor, very important. Pretty simple, and it's really improved. I mean, when Google first introduced it, it was a nightmare how they handled it, but they have improved, and it's been nicer.
Well, a lot of organizations, their early implementations of it were so horrible to work with. I mean,
nobody wanted to use it.
Yeah,
it was just too much work, and we've talked about multiple times. With security comes inconvenience, but as a vendor like Google, your bank, if you make the inconvenience so much, people aren't going to use it.
Well, and that's the tough thing, right? Because security and convenience are always at odds.
Yep.
And the goal with multi-factor and the goal with two-factor has been for years is, how do we make this so easy to get along with that people will use it and not mind?
Right.
Or just opt out. But increasingly, especially with new regulations like GDPR, with PCI, with other
wonderful acronyms that you don't want to know.
Yeah, basically with all these different regulatory bits that are coming down the pike, it's becoming more of a requirement than an opt-in.
Yeah, and it really is for our safety and the security of our information, our finances, health records, all of that.
Yeah. So we see a lot of parallel efforts going on. Some efforts are, how do we make this security that is really, really good, very, very easy to get along with. On the other side, you have regulatory bodies and legislation bodies saying, we're going to require you to secure your stuff better than you already are.
Yeah.
So they're coming together and saying, okay, it's a requirement, but how do we make it better?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of improvements in the field.
That's
and
good.
if you Google through their security challenge, if you have a Google account on your personal side, it will ask you sometimes, hey, let's take the security checkup and walk through it. Take the survey.
Yeah, do it.
It's actually quite good. It gives you a lot of visibility into your stuff that you may not know. And it does a pretty good job of explaining what it all is. Not fantastic. I mean, there's some things that are just going to be odd.
Yeah.
But we always have the support desk. We have myself. We have Holly. We're happy to answer any questions you may have about that. But your bank, your credit card company, even your retirement fund offers two-factor authentication now in most cases.
Yeah, so, ours does.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Our retirement system does offer two-factor, and I'm aware of several other retirement systems that do as well.
That's good. Well, Shawn, thank you. Hopefully you found us and can enjoy, understand a little bit better what two-factor authentication is and how to use it. And again, as Shawn said, you can always reach out to us. So with that, I unfortunately do have to walk toward the screen to shut down the webcast, but we'll cut that out in post. Anyway, have a great day. We will hopefully see you in September, which is scary, just right around the corner. Again, we are podcasting these shows now, so you can also check us out there. Just search Ask the Security Guy. Have a great day.
All right, thanks.